I don't usually get into topics like this, but kind of been challenged a little bit here lately by a couple of people that apparently are just racists on my website here. So I just wanted to go over a few topics here, and you might learn something. If you're a black Hebrew Israelite, you might learn something too. In fact, anybody that's listening might learn something about the slavery that went on in North America hundreds of years ago. Now, there's no reason to feel guilty about it now. You had nothing to do with it, and it happened a long, long time ago. And so, I mean, you can't be guilty for something that happened, without your knowledge at all. Of course, that would be kind of like in the Bible when they talk about how they're going to spread the sins among their children and stuff like that. It's not a feasible concept, and so we're way past that. But so let's look at this here. 9 facts about slavery that they don't want you to know. I don't know who they are, but maybe we'll figure out who they are. I'm guessing it's either the people that are propagating problems with us, or it's the Black Hebrew Israelites or the Afrocentricists. So, 'cause I don't know if y'all are aware, especially in the UK, but there's a large group of North American blacks who think that they started everything and then somehow regressed back into Africa before people caught them. And we're going to go over all that, and I can show you how that never really happened either, and stuff too. We'll do that here in just a few moments. The first legal slave owner in America history was a black tobacco farmer named Anthony Johnson. Wow, that's surprising, because I'm sure that what's beaten into you by black people staring you down and making you feel so bad of something that didn't even happen to them, but supposedly their great 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 granddad, was everyday whippings on a black man, and everybody had a bunch of black people they're all just whipping on, and stuff. And you're like, really? I fail to think people back then acted like that, but whatever. I guess I should feel bad. No, we shouldn't feel remorse for this people. I want to let you know. And by the way, most white people don't at all. It's something that happened so long ago. I mean, if you go the same distance back from that, we were all in slavery in Europe and stuff, and chattel slavery, and ended up having more problems, though, because there they weren't trying to keep us alive. They were actually just killing us. So it's a little worse. But yeah, there's chattel slavery. It used to last 7 years. It was a normal thing. In fact, there's an etiquette in the Bible for it, where it only lasts 7 years, and then you're supposed to set everybody free and have a big festival and stuff about it, and everybody parties, and bygones be bygones. And that's indeed exactly what African slavery was in America until Anthony Johnson, who was a black man, which sounds strange as hell, doesn't it? We'll look into that in a second, but let's look at this. North Carolina's largest slaveholder in 1860 was a black plantation owner named William Ellison. Yeah, I've heard of that. He owned like 16,000 acres. He had like 1,400 slaves or whatever off of them, and but 300 of those were white. So American Indians own thousands of black slaves. Yeah, that's true. And in fact, a lot of black people now that are getting their DNA checked are finding out they have a lot of Indian in their ancestry and stuff. And of course, the Hebrew Israelites are going, "See, we had Indian." It's like, no, you were mated with Indians here again too. Same thing happened with Indians. Indians bought you. Believe it or not, we bought their land from them, and they turned around and bought you for that money, and had y'all do the same type of work. It was a normal thing back then. In fact, slavery goes way back more than just this little thing that y'all are talking about. It's all the way into the Bible, where Caucasian nomadic tent people were enslaving each other too, and from different areas. And it's also a way to show that they didn't have a good bloodline in the Bible, because it's supposed to be some perfect bloodline. But then again, they think women are just a vessel. So they end up breeding with people that are servants of it. So that'd be a Canaanite wife, and this guy's a this, and this is that. So they're mixed all the way through a little bit too and stuff. So many black slaves were allowed to hold jobs, own businesses, and own real estate. Oh, I'm sorry, skipped one. In 1830, there were 3,755 free black people who owned 12,740 black slaves. Wow. As far back as 1830, all these people, after their 7 years that got everything out, they were turning around and buying their own black slaves to work on their own land that they had worked for and bought. But so black people are owning black people? That's weird. Many black peoples were allowed to hold jobs, own businesses, and own real estate. Yeah, once they did their 7 years, they could start working on a plot of land, and I believe the customary thing was like 2 acres and stuff. And sad thing is, white people didn't get any. Yeah. Oh, and so let's see. Brutal black on black slavery was common in Africa for thousands of years. Oh yeah, they used to have tribal wars and collect them and everything, and then they had cannibalism if you got caught with the cannibal tribes and stuff, taking each other. That's why Nigeria got so popular, and the Niger people were worth more than the regular blacks because they had seemed to have taken over the whole little area down there, and from being a smaller tribe, so people paid more for them, and that's where that whole racist word comes from, which really only ever meant black. Yeah, it's basically if you Negro. Well, if you take O off the end of it, then you end up with Neger. O is like of the land of. Of what? They're the black people. That's all it ever was. Just like the rivers, which we call the Niger River. But I guess it's Niger, Negro, but whenever you say the N word, it's I, it's not E. So where does that come from? It comes from the black color. It always ever meant black. It was that anyhow. So, but it gets turned into something bad, and then people start yelling at each other, and you can't even say a color anymore. It'd be like if we couldn't say chartreuse anymore. Now we have to come up and say mauve or some color because it ended up being something racial. Just like the flag. I mean, all these things, when that flag was there before. But anyhow, most slaves brought to America from Africa were purchased from black slave owners. Yeah, they've gone through the records on these, and it's like way up in the 90% range that they were captive by one or another and then bought from other black people that were getting rich. I saw one thing where some guy made 260,000 francs or whatever it was back then, pounds, in 1 year just off selling. And his name was King Mbuzi or something. He's just uh, uh, he was a king that they went around capturing other tribes just for the purpose of doing this, so he could get rich. So, they act like white man came and took us away, and be like, no, this was all offered to us by blacks that have been doing it for thousands of years. It kind of changes the look of everything, but let's try to be truthful about this. Let's try to be totally truthful about all of this so we can get past it. Because the truth is, for thousands of years, Africans on Africans around in all of Africa had been doing this. And they hadn't been connected with Egypt or anywhere. You can see there's fights with Nubians, but the Egyptians did not like the Nubians. I'll show you that here in a minute too. So we're going to do that and blow up the Hebrew thing here real quick. So they're black on black selling black slavery. Black selling to who? Well, if you look into it, it's actually Jewish slave ship owners. They own like 25 ships or something, and they take them all to South America. 92% of the slave trade went to South America. 6 or 7% they say comes to, some people say 4 to, I'm just 6 or 7% came to North America. But the weird thing about that is, let's go ahead and blow the Hebrew thing out of the water. The weird thing about that is the problem is they had smallpox. Real bad. It was an epidemic they broke out with. Well, yeah, the Indians, the American Indians, they broke out. Yeah, it's because they didn't have an immune system to it and had never experienced it. Whenever we ran into them, they all got smallpox, and it caused a bunch of them to die off. In fact, reality is, half the Indians died off before they ever even saw white people by transference amongst themselves before we ever started going west. Oh, they want to act like we went and killed every single one of them and stuff, and it's like, no, smallpox took out such a large percentage of them, it's not even funny. But so what makes that blow the Hebrew thing out of the water is that, well, if they were originally the Hebrews and the Israelites, then they would have been around the people of the Levant and the Jewish people that were capturing them and putting them on the ships. They would have been around Egyptians, and those mixed with each other, and we have that verified. It's simple. And all the people of that area, all the way up through Rome and Greece and stuff, and that they didn't get this, but black people did whenever they first contacted them, whenever they started capturing for the slave trade. So the people that were brought to North America, well, first of all, they probably weren't kings. In reality, 1 out of thousands is a king. And they seem to say that they leave the kings there, take a large population, leave, come back, do it again, come back, do it again. Who's doing this? Blacks. Blacks are capturing them, taking portions, taking their children, taking things like that. Yeah, blacks on blacks. That's where they all come from. It's just reality. It's just reality. So, one reality, too, is that once we got over here for the shortest period of time in slavery, white people are the ones that ended legal chattel slavery and slavery together, all together, totally. But there used to be a white slavery. Y'all don't know that, right? You don't know that there was chattel slavery? Well, let's go down this order. This legal slave owner here, Anthony Johnson. Let's check this out real quick. This is him. And of course, they don't like this fact, but here's the thing. Political correctness must die. No, black people hate this that come out. Well, they're saying that this isn't even his picture. Okay, well, let's just picture it's a different black man, but that looks like some kind of early black entrepreneur. Let's just put it on him. It doesn't matter, really. I mean, does it really matter if you got a good look at it? I mean, it looked a little different. Let's put somebody else's picture right there. Anyhow, the first slave owner in America was not only a black man, he went to court and demanded it. Yeah. In 1654, it was time for Anthony Johnson to release John Casor, a black indentured servant, 7 years, everything's cool. Instead, Anthony told Casor he was extending his time. Casor left and became employed by a free white man named Robert Parker, and they're doing the cool. What happens next with the black man? Anthony Johnson sued Robert Parker in the Northampton court from 1654, and in 1655, the court ruled that Anthony Johnson could hold John Casor indefinitely. The court gave judicial sanction for blacks to own slaves of their own race. Thus, Casor became the first permanent slave owner, and Johnson the first slave owner. Because nobody was owned before, there was chattel slavery. And so, let's look into this real quick for a second. There's, do I still have it here? I don't have it. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay. Let's look at red and blonde Egyptian-haired mummies. And you can see all these red and blonde Egyptian-haired mummies. And they say that it's pretty much solved now. Let's take a look at this.
Hi, it's Mike Chen. What we're going to be talking about in this video is what some people may consider a controversial subject, as with most videos on this channel, but also one worthy of study. And before we start, I'm going to raise this question to everybody. Do we really know, genetically speaking, where ancient Egyptians came from? And the answer is, we have our theories, but not really. We also don't know what exactly they look like. When we try to imagine what ancient Egyptians may have looked like, some of us immediately picture a civilization populated by citizens with dark skin and dark hair, hair, but was that truly the case? At the time when graves of mummies were discovered more than 100 years ago, a general expectation was that the early Egyptians were of Negroid origin. But in our enlightened and technologically advanced era, where we possess greatly enhanced capabilities in forensic science, certain mind-blowing archaeological discoveries and evidences have emerged that are not exactly supportive of the seemingly universal known fact that dynastic Egyptians were exclusively of African origin. All shades of hair were found around the time of ancient Egypt's civilization, from brown to blonde and even auburn and red. Today, these hair colors are found among the people of North Europe and North Africa and are indicative of Caucasian origins. So does this mean that there were fair-skinned, blonde, or red-headed ancient Egyptians prior and during Egypt's dynastic period? There is a theory suggesting that prior to 2000 BC, Egyptians were of Caucasoid European ethnicity. This is supported by the physical anthropology of the oldest mummies that have ever been found, the busts and statues of several pharaohs and their wives, the colored wall paintings discovered, and the descriptions provided in historical accounts. As early as 5000 BC, the majority of the Caucasoid European occupants of Egypt were believed to have begun abandoning the increasingly warm country and headed to the cooler climates of Europe. Then after about 1500 BC, the population in the area became increasingly mixed, with the Nubians from the south of Egypt, which explains the typical physical appearance and genetic makeup of modern-day Egyptians. This theory strongly refutes the ideas of Afrocentrism, with the presentation of several archaeological, anthropological, and forensic evidences, three of which I am about to discuss with you now. One of the most famous cases of mummies of ancient Egypt that had red or blonde hair is one of the Ghibeline pre-dynastic mummies, which is housed in the British Museum, commonly referred to by curators and the public as Ginger. This ancestor from ancient Egypt died more than 5,000 years ago in the late pre-dynastic period, around 3400 BC or earlier. His mummified body was found in a cemetery at Ghibeline, Egypt, with his toes and fingernails perfectly preserved. He was given the nickname of Ginger because of his golden curly hair, which interestingly looks similar to the curly locks often seen on Greek and Roman sculptures. And although his body is stained from buried in the sand for more than 5,000 years, this Egyptian ancestor looked like he once had yellowish white skin. Another example of uncovered red-haired mummies from ancient Egypt are the ones found among thousands of other mummies by a group of archaeologists in the Fag-al-Gamis graveyard in the south of Cairo. Archaeologists from Brigham Young University in Utah have been excavating that cemetery for about 30 years, and they have established that many of the mummies they have found date back to 30 BC, which is around the time when the Roman or Byzantine Empire ruled Egypt. Researchers reached the conclusion that there were more than 1 million bodies within the cemetery, and it was revealed that the cemetery was not intended for royalty, but for the common people. There were many interesting discoveries that were uncovered in the excavation of this ancient cemetery in the analysis of the mummies found buried in the area. And one of them is the observation that the mummies appear to be clustered together according to their hair color. They found blonde-haired mummies in one area, while another area was filled with red-haired ones. This led to the impression that the clusters of mummies buried by hair color in the graveyard could be indicative that these people once belonged in the same family groups and therefore were related with each other. This also speaks volumes of the possibility that a small but significant part of ancient Egypt's population were red-haired or blonde-haired individuals.
Yeah, that's
the
you,
last case of red-haired Egyptian mummies we will be discussing is the preserved body of Ramses II, who is arguably the most famous of all the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. Ramses II ruled as a pharaoh of the 19th dynasty between 1279 to 1213 BC. It is believed to be the one who reigned when the children of Israel were liberated through the prophet Moses. In 1975, the Egyptian government tasked French scientists to attempt the preservation of Ramses' mummy. This opened an opportunity for researchers to determine his age, body condition, health, diet, and even his racial affinities. There were those who were of the opinion that Ramses II was black. However, according to the study conducted by Professor P.F. Scaldi and his research team, microscopic examinations of the pharaoh's hair roots showed that his hair had natural red pigments, which meant that in his younger years, Ramses II was a redhead. Moreover, it was also determined that Ramses had wavy hair, and a combination of these features meant that the pharaoh
They've had that mummy for years with that red blonde hair.
Evidence for some experts to conclude that some ancient Egyptians were blonde or red-haired, but there are still many researchers who believe that there were no ancient Egyptians whose natural hair weren't dark brown or black. Some of these skeptics argue that mummies found with light-colored strands of hair can be explained by the effects of the mummification process itself. And so, to find a definitive answer to this intriguing question about the effects of the mummification process on human hair, Dr. Jeanette Davey from the Victoria Institute of Forensic Medicine in Australia decided to conduct experiments on 16 hair samples from men and women aged between 4 and 92 years old. Most of the hair samples were dark colored, but for comparison, one of the sample strands was gray while another one was fair. There was also one strand with henna on it. Davey and her colleague, retired industrial chemist Alan Elliott, also prepared some powder of synthetic natron for their experiments. Natron was a type of salt that was applied on the bodies during the process of mummification to dry them out. It has also been linked to the supposed change in hair color of the human remains. Davey and Elliott covered the hair samples in synthetic natron for 40 days, the same amount of time believed to be required
That one looks black.
to dry out the human body. When the 40-day period had passed, the samples were removed from the salty powder, and after undergoing microscopic analysis, it was determined that there was no change in the color of the hair samples at all. For Dr. Davey, the result of her experiment is convincing enough to say that fair-haired Egyptians did exist in ancient Egypt. It's just that finding fair-haired Egyptian mummies has so far been a very rare occurrence. Some ancient Egyptians could have been blue-eyed blondes or redheads, and while the country during those times was not as multicultural as several parts of the world are today, there were certainly a variety of racial mixes that made the existence of fair-skinned Egyptians possible. Now, is this discovery particularly earth-shattering? Well, it depends on which vantage point you are analyzing the evidence from. It remains a fact that a majority of Egyptians today are dark-haired and dark-skinned. These archaeological, anthropological, and forensic evidences merely attest to a not-so-implausible reality that at some point in its ancient history, there were a portion of people in Egypt who were red, were blonde-haired, and fair-skinned. I mean, in our modern world, individuals of different race and...
Okay, so we've saw that. Let's see here. Let's see somebody else that went to 4 museum exhibits. Caucasian Egyptian statues. Let's see, where is this at here? Yeah. So let's take a look at this. And I'm not going to show you all of this because it goes on for 20 minutes, but yeah. So, I mean, they acted like they're all friends with them, but no, there's stele all the way through the dynasties. 3 different ones of them where they talk about the Nubians and the black people and how they hate them and they want to kill them all. And here shows a war against them. In fact, an interesting thing, people always want to claim King Tut, and King Tut had sandals that had black Nubians drawn on the bottom of it, so every time he took a step, he would be crushing them. In fact, he had some funny artifacts and things that led to this same thing too. And he was just a young prince who hadn't even done it. And he was following what had happened before. So apparently his forefathers all the way back had had a lot of this. So. Yeah, trained dogs. By the way, the Egyptians already had trained dogs and trained animals, but the Nubians and none of the Africans really had trained animals or anything at that time. let's skip ahead a little bit here, people, because yeah, Old Kingdom. Dude's got a mustache. Fifth Dynasty. Ooh, he's got gold impregnated in his face. Yeah. No, they don't look African at all, do they? You'd have to say no. This is the way Africans look there. So, between here, this is the way they draw the Africans and the Nubians as. They used to scar themselves on their faces and stuff. Cheeks and foreheads. Here's some scars on this one's face. That's not a match right there. And of course, they say, well, it's in Africa. Well, it attaches over here. And did nobody from over there come across the desert? Because if they did, they got tied up like that. There's a Nubian invasion for 93 years in the 25th dynasty, and then Persians come in and knock them back out, and then Persians continue to reign for the rest of the time. So it goes all of a sudden from being we was always pharaohs to once you were, and it looks like it was because all of these people left. And where'd they go? Well, they went north and they formed the other great civilizations that did great stonework, like Greece and Rome. And what happened over here and what happened in Africa? Well, not much. They were still somewhat primitive, and so they didn't really build fancy things. In fact, they tried to mock some of Egypt's stuff in the later period, but nothing really of, stature that Egypt has. I mean, nobody built the pyramid again, but you look at the temples and stuff they have and the way they build their columns and everything, it's all based on the same similar type architecture. And Egyptian writing looks like it evolves into Coptic, and Coptic, of course, comes into Greek, and it goes from there, and they both branch into Latin, whereas Africa didn't have any written language at this time. They actually don't have a written language until Islam. They had their own dialects that they used in tribal dialects, but they didn't have anything written down. So, yeah, I'm not seeing any people that really look black. Let's skip here forward a little bit. No. Yeah, we saw that guy earlier. Yeah, those are... they draw women with tan, light skin, and they draw men with a reddish tone to them because they get out in the sun a whole lot more. But whenever they draw a black person, he's solid black. And they do take people and symbolically black them for the Book of the Dead ceremony, and then they wash themselves after. If you read the whole thing about how they do it, then it shows it there. So, yeah, pretty interesting. Yeah, that's a pretty good match. Late dynasty stuff, 11th dynasty, now all of a sudden they look like that. So here's what black people look like in their art. And they always have these rings in their ears because when they capture them, they put a ring in their ear or a ring in their nose. Usually it's in their ear, yay. And you look in the Bible and they always talk about it too. In fact, that's where the idea of a wedding ring comes from whenever you snatch a girl and all this type of stuff. So this is them, and these are the ancient Egyptians, and these are the Negroids. These are the black people. I'm guessing they're Nubians. So quite a bit different than we thought on this too. Quite a bit different than we thought on slavery. And the Hebrew thing was never thought of seriously by anybody but the black people, because they tried to find somewhere in the Bible that says 400 years, and of course they weren't even in slavery for 400 years. Well, they will be after 2019. Well, they've not been in slavery since 1865, so that kind of ruins that one. Oh, they say they're still oppressed. They're going to be oppressed anywhere they go if they're going to be racist and talk crap about the people that free them. So that's just never going to work out. But interesting thing about this King Menes, this actually takes and watch this. I'll try to do this real quick for y'all. This actually attaches all the way back to Sumeria. You saw the way that guy looked right there, right? Okay, so let's look at what Sumerian priests look like. See if I can do this. and you'll see somebody that looks just like it. And, well, first one looks just like it. Does that not look like that other Edith? What? Get back here. Does that not look like that other statue? In fact, you see where it's joined to his belly, and that's where his two hands are, and then his arms come out, and his arms come out. He's got this square terraced beard, the googly eyes with the insets, which the Sumerians actually have. I'll show you that real quick before we jump back and look at the other one. But you can see these lapis lazuli eyes that they have, and isn't that Egyptian? But it's pre-Egyptian. It's the stuff from over here too that they have. Okay, so one more time here real quick before we go. You look at this guy. It's another view of that same type of thing with that beard and that posture that they have going on. Now that's something Sumerian, but it's not Egyptian. Oh yeah? Who's the Egyptian Menes First Dynasty? This blue-eyed guy right here. Bam, bam, bam. Supposed to be Sargon's son. And so now let's go back and look at that other one. Where were we at? Right here. And this is that statue. Hopefully it'll go right to it. No, it went to those. But see that statue, early dynasty, 5,000 years old. So let's see if I can find it here. Right here, the real Menes. You can see that terraced beard, the connection of the two hands. In fact, it's this arm's hand that is still there attached to his belly. And there's where that arm comes around and that arm comes around. And that's pretty much it right there. What did the sketch look like that they had beforehand? It just didn't go back to it. Sketch beforehand? Yeah. You can see the Google eyes, the insets on it, everything. That's it. So that's your pre-dynastic, and it seems like they're Caucasians. And what happens, like Mike told you in that video, is towards the end of it, and after a big giant drought, and Egypt starts going to crap, they leave and go north. That causes a lot of turmoil. It has to do with the Hyksos leaving, and then whenever that happens, Nubia jumps in real quick. But then the Persians come back and knock them back out, and then it's always Persians from then on. And Persians are Caucasian too, so then they don't have a large percentage of African DNA in them. But these first guys have none. In fact, all the way to King Tut afterwards don't have any, because King Tut matches 92% to European males with blue eyes. Like if y'all like it. Appreciate y'all. Enjoy the information. If you didn't like it, I'm sorry, but here's the truth. Instead of going around believing lies and getting all riled up and hating the people that actually freed you, maybe you ought to embrace the real reality of the world, because it's got to happen sometime. Might as well be now. How about we throw down that stupid Bible book that wasn't ever yours in the first place, and maybe, and the rest of us need to too, because it's bullshit. It's all written by the Greeks. I've got more videos on that. It'll prove it to you. Go through my videos. And now we can go ahead and go on with life. Now we don't have people hating people that freed them. Just seems so backwards, doesn't it? Especially when you find out it was the Jews and the Jew land and the Jew boats and the Jewish people splitting settlements in the West Indies and stuff, and then you're going to come blame it on whites. And only 24% of the people that were slave owners, 26% of the people in the South were slave owners, right? And it said that every Jewish family at least had one, and if they're rich enough, they had 2, 3, 4, whatever they could afford. So you can see there's a large population going to that. Then you find out they were a lot of the plantation owners and the landowners that became plantations. And so how many would go up under that banner? And the hilarious thing is, now you're taking that same Jewish Bible and trying to use it against not the people that did all this crap, but against the people that freed you. And I just freed you too, because smallpox. There's no way that you could have been experiencing anybody in the Levant area ever and taken a group of people that kept breeding and had kids that wouldn't have been immune to smallpox. That's the way it works now. It's the way it works then. It's the way it works everywhere. So whenever they got smallpox to the point that it was just killing half of them before they got to South America, and then half of those before you could get any healthy through it and make to North America, that kind of shows you that they have a worse rate than the population that had to face it before did, in percentage wise. And it really shows that there never were a Hebrew Israelite. Of course not. Of course not. Why made you believe something like that? Well, the book, 400 years, that happened to the people in Canaan a long, long time ago. Well, it says a boat journey. Yeah, they were the boat people and Phoenicians and stuff. Have you ever noticed in the Bible they don't ever get on a damn boat? So when it says they're going to get back on a boat again, doesn't that key you off to something that didn't ever involve them? No, you went past that. You went into Whitey. It's got to end, people. You got to quit hating. Everybody else is just trying to live, and you could live too if you'd quit hating. Peace out.